Something a little different from me this time, and another first. On this piece of walnut you can actually see where I've got a couple of cut marks there. That's where I've already cut on the bandsaw as far as I can possibly go. To finish the cut off, I'm just using the replicating saw. Certainly don't copy what I do here. Your safety is your own responsibility, and I do this how I feel safe with it. Cutting through the rest of this wasn't too bad. It took me probably about another 10 minutes. It's then onto the lathe between centres. This is just an ordinary spindle. Now, if you've got one of these tool rests where the tops screw on, just make sure they're fully tight. And it took me a few minutes before I realised it was loose. Straightforward rough and gouge work here, just taking it all down to round. And with the wood being so wet, it's absolutely brilliant the way the shavings come off. Simply face off the end. Then I'm out with the Simon Hope hollowing rig, and you'll see here how quick and easy it is to set up onto the lathe. Just using the carbide cutter on the end here, and because it's really the first proper use I've had of this on this type of work, it's just a case of modifying things around a bit just to try and get that centre cut. I even had to try and resort back to my other tool rest to see if I could get it a bit lower, and oddly enough, the tool rest that came with the lathe would have been too high to use this tool in the first place. Just taking light, gentle cuts as I go across the bottom there, and you'll slowly see as we go through the video here that the walls slowly become thinner and thinner, and I'm just trying to do that just to try and minimise any tool marks. Slowly getting deeper and deeper into the bottom, always trying to take constantly light cuts, and always trying to run up and down the sides just to try and thin the walls out slowly, and again minimising on any tool marks that's there. The deeper you actually get into the piece, it really is that much harder to try and get rid of any tool marks. I tried various different methods of doing the sides and to try and keep this as straight as possible. Once I've got the piece finished off, it's just a case of doing a bit of sanding work and then going in with the scraper. The scraper I didn't actually have too much joy with. I think it's basically because the wood was so wet, it tended to turn it into this like fuzzy mess. Because this thing was so deep, there's no way I was going to get in there with my hand properly or anything else for sanding. And I found the easiest way was, I found an old pair of forceps which I used for fishing probably about 30 years ago, and just holding a piece of sandpaper on there worked an absolute treat. Interesting enough, the moisture level on this was down to about 15% on the outside there once I got it turned down. Decided to put a little bit of a feature on the base rather than having one forward straight shape, and then just sand it all up. And you'll see there as well already straight away now that the rim has already started distorting, which I'm quite happy with, as this was one of the reasons why I wanted to use the wet wood and trying to do it as a finished shape, just to see really what happens with all the wood. Using my homemade bolt sander, went through all the grits, I think up to about 400 grit. I wanted to put some form of a feature around the top, so I've just put some masking tape, or builder's tape as some may call it, just on the inside and outside. I've then marked a line for where I want to actually drill some holes, and this is the first proper outing of my new indexing system which I made in the previous project. Just using a pencil just to mark off 12 holes around the thing. I found to start with that after I did about 3 of these holes that it was slipping on the chuck, and so therefore I had to tighten it all up and then just do it all with a Sharpie. Again, using the indexing system is really, really good on this sort of case as well, because if you haven't got a lock on your lathe, you can use that to lock the spindle in place, and it makes it so much easier to drill all the holes. Once all the holes are drilled, just remove all the masking tape, get rid of the indexing system, because I've finished with that now. Resand it all back just to try and tidy up where all those holes were drilled. And then what I do is I then just use a nail, just trying to get rid of some extra fibres that's inside the holes. The first coat of Danish oil, and again to get inside, I found that the easiest way was just to pour some inside, and using the forceps again, put a bit of kitchen towel on the forceps and just coat the whole thing inside. I think over the course of a few days I put about 5 coats of Danish oil on this. After that I then put it back on the lathe, just part it off as much as I dare before I cut it off with a handsaw. To finally tidy up the bottom, just put my bowl sander head onto my hand drill and slowly sanded it all down to how I was happy with the finish. Final thing was, this is just a piece of 3mm leather lace that I bought off eBay. Just threaded it all through, and I wanted to make the bow to put on the front where the feature is, so it's just added a little extra to it. Something totally different for me this time. Never done anything like this before. When I went down to UKIWS the other weekend, I bought the Simon Hope hollowing rig, and this wasn't actually the first thing I tried. The first thing I tried was a bit of a design failure, so I've totally scrapped that idea on that particular one, modified it, and it just turned into a basic bowl in the end. How did I get on with it? Well, first of all, this piece was very, very wet walnut that I got from my uncle last year, so in places it was between 20 and 30% moisture levels. So that, for starters, did provide a little bit of a challenge, and I really did expect it to warp a bit. And I mean, you can probably see from the top there that we've already got a nice oval on there, and that had happened even before it come off the lathe first time to do some finishing work. So it was the plan to take it down to finishing size, and I think the walls there are probably about 3-4mm thick. And just let it do what it wants to do. And I kept it attached to the base before I piled it off, because I knew that there would be some distortion on the bottom there as well. And over the course of several days, it was given several coats of Danish oil, sanded back a little bit, more coats of Danish oil. With the Simon Hope hollowing rig, how did I find it? Well, I've got to say, this little thing here, this little carbide cutter, really, really does cut well. And you really have to be careful, because if you do put too much pressure on, all of a sudden it can really dig in quite quickly. So light, gentle cuts are the key. The other thing as well is that, especially like when you're going across the bottom or trying to get work on the centre part, you obviously need the cutter at the centre height. And the other thing I found as well, that because you really just do need to tilt your bar a little bit for the cut in the first place, depending on where you obviously put this, you then alter your height where you are on the work. So you either then have to keep raising and lowering the tool, or alternatively you have to change the orientation of this. So I found, in actual fact, the easier thing was to do a combination of however you tilted the bar and alter this. And in some cases I actually spun this around the other way, so it was this side of the piece rather than this side, depending on where you was working. But that I found absolutely brilliant. The thing I really did struggle with was with this scraper, and I think it was down to it just being wet wood, because it just really sort of just turned the whole piece inside to some sort of like a furry mess. But so I think that was really down to it just being wet wood. So that I really still need to try on some form of dry wood, just to see how well I get on with it. Size wise, I mean, that is about 8.5 inches tall, about 215 mil, and I've gone literally down the bottom there to probably around about 180, 190 mil, so it was quite a reach as well. And because, I mean, this walnut has really only got one part what I class as the really interesting pattern, which is on the front here where I put the front lace, and because of that, and it's so tall, I just wanted to do something a little different, which is where I come up with the idea of the lace, and especially with it being distorted, it's almost sort of like the lace is just trying to hold it all together. And to do that, I then use my indexing system that I created in a previous project video, and that was the first outing of this. It was just my standard 60 pinwheel, which is 60 degree sections, and just basically worked out however many holes I wanted, how I could divide it up into this. Now I have actually got probably a couple of tool marks in there. You can't really feel them so much. You can probably just about see where they are a little bit lower down, but the weird thing is as well though was that what looks like a tool mark right at the very bottom actually isn't tool marks. I think it's sort of like the coloration of the wood and probably sort of like just where the grain changes. Quite a challenging project to do, but did thoroughly enjoy it, and it was working with that wet wood that I wanted to try and get down to a finishing side just to see what would actually happen with the wood. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next project video.